everybody. Today we're debating whether or not God exists, and we are starting right now. Ladies and gentlemen, thrilled to have you here for another epic debate. As today we are debating, does God exist? We are very excited as we have a tag team match. We don't get to have these very often, but it's always fun when we do. Want to let you know though, if it's your first time here and you love debates on politics, religion, and science, feel free to hit that subscribe button if you want reminders of future debates coming up. So for example, you'll see at the bottom right of your screen, next week we'll have a debate on Bernie or Biden. So that should be a fun political one we've never done. And we've got a lot more coming up tomorrow. Creation, biblical ancestry, all that stuff in the creation evolution camp. So that should be a lot of fun. But want to let you know a couple things. This is going to be a pretty simple format. So what we are doing tonight is we're going to give each side a flexible 10-minute opening statement that they are going to get to divide amongst each other. So you have on the left TJump and Amy, who are representing the atheist position, and then on the right of your screen, Sterling and CC, Canadian Catholic, who will be defending the theistic side. Want to let you know they're linked in the description, so feel free to check out their links that I have conveniently placed just for you. If you're like, I want to hear more, well, you can hear more just below. And with that, we're going to have Q&A at the end. So if you have a question, feel free to ask it in the live chat. And if you put at Modern Day Debate in that question or comment, that makes it easier for me to see. And then, by the way, super chats are an option as well. So if you have a super chat, it allows you to both ask a question or a comment toward one of the speakers, to which they would, of course, get a chance to respond to. And by the way, is it just me? Is Tom blinking green? Tom, I don't know. It's like it's probably, there's maybe a malfunction on your side. Your camera looks like it's blinking green just a little bit. It's like going on those websites. You shouldn't, Tom. All right, next. Just kidding, buddy. I'm sorry. But I want to let you know, though, folks, one thing I want to mention is that if you do have a question, Super Chat also pushes your question to the top of the list for the Q&A section. So with that, very excited, folks. We're going to jump right into it. The atheist will be leading here by getting the first opening statement, and then we'll go to the theist for theirs, followed by open conversation. So Tom and Amy, thanks so much for being here. Pleasure to have you, and the floor is all yours.
If you don't mind, I'll start. Are there good reasons to believe in a God? No, and I'm going to go a bit further and say there are no reasons to believe in a God, because if it isn't a good reason, then it's not a reason you should believe it. So are there good reasons to believe in a God? The answer is no, and the reason is because we need some way to differentiate between what's imaginary and what's real. If you can't do that, it doesn't count as evidence. And nothing that theists can do is, well, all they provide is words, and words can't differentiate between what's imaginary and what's real. So they have no basis to determine their God is any more real than leprechauns or fairies or unicorns or any other imaginary thing. So no, there are no good reasons to believe in a God.
Okay. Give me 1 second to get the screen share.
You bet.
Says it's disabled.
Oh, I think that, so there might be more than one way to do the screen share. At the bottom of the Zoom window that you have on your screen, there's usually like a little green square, and it's got an arrow pointing upward. If you click on that, it'll usually launch you into full screen.
Is it at the top or the bottom?
It's either on the bottom or it could be on the side as well. So you'll just kind of want to wave your cursor toward the bottom of the screen as well as to the side. And if it's not already showing, there should be a green box that'll pop up, and it'll allow you to click it, and it'll launch you into it.
Give me just 1 second.
No problemo. So want to let you know, though, folks, we do have a lot of debates coming up, so I will mention those. Want to let you know about next week. This has just been confirmed. We technically have to confirm it just to be sure that Jeff Holiday is okay with his opponent. But we are setting up a debate between Nathan Thompson and Jeff Holiday on whether or not predatory pseudoscience should be, you could say, restricted from free speech. So that's one we are definitely excited about. Hope you can make that. We think it'll be next week. We're still kind of tying together the details, but I think it's fair to say that that one's pretty much set. So that should be a lot of fun. And a lot of you don't know, but you see Sterling pictured there on your screen. Sterling is actually Nathan Thompson's brother. So distant relationship, but, you know, still you can see the resemblance there. So very excited, folks. And then, so sorry, Amy. I know that sometimes Zoom can be a little bit fickle.
You're fine. Once I get it, all the other debates will be good.
No problemo. I think you might. Let's see. We're close. It's and you're on desktop or laptop, right?
I am on a desktop.
Oh, okay. So I think there
I
should.
resized it, but nothing's coming up.
Yeah, I suppose it could be if the window's too small. I would maybe just try to, without, I suppose it's, you can't maximize your screen and also do PowerPoint, so that makes it an extra challenge. I would just maybe make it as big as you can without maximizing it, and hopefully that green box should pop up.
Green box. And it's not the invite participants share screen.
It'll have, it'll just say share, and it'll have a green box usually.
Should be Alt S. Just hold Alt, press S.
Alt S. It says host disabled screen sharing.
Oh no, hold on. Okay, so sorry. This has been happening lately. This is what I'm going to do. So sorry about that.
No, I'm sorry.
No, you didn't do anything. It must be on my end. Okay. So embarrassing, folks. Give me 1 second. I think that I've been on Zoom calls all week with the virus, so I think I must have hit something as of late that made it such that you're, for some reason, not allowed to show your video, but we're going to make it such that you can. I'm going to make you the host right now. So you should be able to now for sure.
Okay.
Thanks for your patience.
So do we see that?
Yes. I'm going to flip it over on OBS, and then the
right.
audience will see it. All set.
Okay. So, is there good evidence for a God? A rebuttal to theistic claims based on consciousness. So, who am I? I was raised in a liberal Jewish household, which generally means that I got to eat bacon, but I got sent to a conservative Hebrew synagogue because my mom thought that was the right thing to do. But I ended up making a deal with her in my teenage years that I do the whole bat mitzvah thing, then I never have to do anything religious again, and I haven't looked back. Is there evidence for a God? I don't believe so. However, I do believe that we actually have evidence in the counter direction. So this presentation is going to be a single critique of theism through the study of our mind. So why is consciousness even relevant to a debate about God? Well, it's important for understanding morality and ethics, and I actually believe that the answer has implications, namely that a God cannot exist. So what exactly is my definition? Well, it's a mechanism of the brain that handles sensory data, information processing, and short-term memory. And what I actually mean when someone's consciousness is that they have a gradient set of brain states, with awake or on being at one side and asleep or off at the other. And this also includes periods of in between, like when we have just woken up or getting ready for bed. But why does consciousness exist? Well, it's a rival to plants and fungi. It's our way of collecting energy, of providing homeostasis, and if we're lucky, to sometimes procreate. But something to keep in mind, why don't we have these giant brains? Well, it's because neurons are energy greedy. They take up 10 times the amount of oxygen and blood than the cells around them. There's also the factor of being able to squeeze the brain through the vaginal cavity. There has to be an arms race somewhere between how big a brain can be selected for and what is possible. So what's my argument? Well, all mechanisms of the brain have been naturally selected for the benefit of our cells. Consciousness is a mechanism of the brain. Therefore, consciousness has been naturally selected for the benefit of our cells. Now we come to the real meat. What is a God? A conscious being that is the creator of the universe. And what I really would like to know is why this God would exist in the first place. I want to know, does God have cells? I would like to know if he, she, whatever has cells, what kind of resources that the consciousness would need to collect. And then I would like to know, if they have no need for resources, why would they need a consciousness in the first place? Do other problems arise? Well, I would like to know the medium that God is actually using the information processing or the thinking that's going done. I would like to know the sensory data by which God is actually collecting. Does have different sensors or things like that, heat, touch. And I want to know where all these memories actually being stored. They have to be stored somewhere. So I would like to know where we can actually peek inside and find the memories. Some final questions. I would like to know how someone can exist outside of time and space. And I'd also like to know how something can be not natural, because to me, supernatural is kind of a PR term. It's like a bunch of people who sat in a room and it's like, it's natural plus. It's like, what does that mean? And then I would also like to know, does this being merely exist to create us? Because that seems to be the only explanation. In conclusion, I believe theistic claims for consciousness have not been proven. The mechanism deals with resource gathering for our bodies. Without a body, God has no reason to exist. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can go next, I would like to introduce myself. First
Hold
of
on
all,
one second.
so, yes.
We're just gonna see if I can pull Amy out of. Once you're, if you're able to unshare, then Amy, thanks so much. We appreciate that opening statement, and then we will jump back into the discussion boxes. So, excellent. Thanks so much, Amy, and thanks for your patience as well with my mistake on the tech. And thanks so much, CC. We are thrilled to have you as well as Sterling. So, CC,
Yeah.
absolutely, the floor is yours.
What can I just ask
First
a
of all,
question
I
real
want to.
quick? Can I just
Yeah.
ask a question real quick before Canadian Catholic goes? Are we in our opening statements? We're not responsible for rebutting the claims they made in their opening statements yet. We're just making opening statements.
Correct.
Okay, just making sure. That's all.
You bet.
First of all, I want to thank James for having me and for having my links in the description. You can check out our official Discord channel and please join and debate us. And James, join James's and Jump's Discord servers, obviously, too. I can confirm both of them are very fun. Now, as for Tom's assertions, I just want to say one thing. And one thing that was really interesting is that James says there is no argument for God's existence. And I would like to ask Tom says, I kind of keep mixing up the two. Tom says there is no evidence at all for God's existence. And my question is, if he hasn't heard all the arguments for God's existence, how could he even make such a conclusion? This is like the basic problem. And I'm surprised that someone with his level of experience would make such an amateur mistake. Okay. Now, as for Amy made some interesting arguments that I think I will leave to Sterling to address. I won't take all the floor away in this opening statement. I just want to address one thing that we can show through various thought experiments, like, for example, the Mary's Room experiment, that consciousness is not all physical. So if Amy is asserting that consciousness is all physical, so made up of all physical facts, then it is up to her to show how this is tenable in light of what we know. So with this brief introduction, I'm just going to give the floor over to Sterling.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I'd like to thank Tom for joining us. I'd like to thank Amy for joining us, and Canadian Catholic as well. I really appreciate having dialogue with all kinds of different worldviews, and it's always fun to kind of bounce ideas off each other. So I hope that we have a good time. Like James said, I'm not going to be responding directly to their claims yet. I mean, because we will obviously, after the opening statements, get into the weeds and the kind of, the PowerPoint and the consciousness debate thing. My argument is going to be based on the argument from reason. The argument from reason, I apologize. That's something else. The argument from motion. And this basically relies on understanding the natures of things. So in philosophy of nature and philosophy of science, basically, I'm going to argue that that's the best explanation for phenomena, for scientific phenomena, for one. And we can go into that. We can talk about some of the premises. I'll just present the syllogism really quick, and then we can kind of go into each individual one. I won't do that all here since we only have 5 minutes, but we can talk about them in the course of the debate. So the premise one is some things are in motion. Like I said, we can define those terms later in the debate. My premise two is that if some things are in motion, then they're put in motion by something else. Conclusion A, that therefore some things are put in motion by something else. Premise 1B, if they're put in motion by something A, then it either has to go to infinity or it's necessary to arrive at a first mover put in motion by no other, F. Premise 2B, they're put in motion by another A, which conclusion B would be, therefore, either this goes on to infinity, I, or it is necessary to arrive at a first mover put in motion by no other. I can provide the symbolic logic to show this follows, by the way. And then premise 1C, either this goes on to infinity, which is derived from the first syllogism, or is necessary to arrive at a first mover, put in motion by no other, or the second syllogism rather, but this cannot go on to infinity, premise 2C, conclusion, therefore it's necessary to arrive at a first mover. And so just to be clear here, and again, we're going to go through all this, we're going to explain it, or I'm going to explain it at least, and defend the premises, and make some definitions and things like that in the course of our debate. But what I'm going to be arguing for is just that there is a God, something that started the universe, that has certain properties, certainly the properties that started the universe. That's sufficient for me to call it a God. I mean, you might say that, okay, well, and we'll go into what that means, what a first mover entails. And we can talk about that. But that's going to be my argument. I'd like to thank everybody again, and hopefully we can have a good discussion.
You bet. Thanks so much. And we will go into the open discussion section. Very excited, folks. As mentioned, if you have a question, fire it into the old live chat. And then do want to let you know, the person who donated, Colorado Biker Prepper, we appreciate it. The camera we're using right now was donated from Colorado Biker Prepper, and who, by the way, Sterling, just like you and I, is from Colorado. So he says howdy, and we'll go into the open discussion section. So thanks so much. The floor is all yours. Whoever would like to go first.
Yeah, I'll go first. So to respond to Catholic, forget his name now, he said that, how do I know, since I haven't heard all of the possible arguments for God, that there are no arguments or evidence for God? Well, evidence is epistemic. It has to actually be in a mind to convince a belief that it actually exists. And since we know that apologists have been arguing this for 3,000 years and have gotten nowhere, all the arguments are crap, it's pretty reasonable to conclude they're not just hiding one under the bed somewhere that's actually really good and excellent that just hasn't been discovered yet. So it's reasonably inductive to conclude there is none. That's a pretty good reason. To address Sterling's argument for motion, yeah, there has to be a first mover. I can grant that. Doesn't have to be a God. No mind required for that at all in any sense. So that's not evidence for a God. What else was there? Oh, the Mary's Room experiment. Pretty much the consensus by all experts in the field of neuroscience and cognitive science shows that no, it's all physical. Like no one accepts the philosophical arguments as meaning anything. Those are just purely what we can imagine, and our ability to imagine things tells us nothing about ontology. So no one in the fields of cognitive science or neuroscience actually care about Mary's Room thought experiment. It tells them nothing. It gives them nothing. It's not worth any credence at all. Neither are any of the other thought experiments. The consensus in all of the academic fields is that the mind and consciousness is purely physical, because that's all the evidence we have indicates that. All right, I'm done.
I'd also add to that, if you're looking for a non-physical element, it would be possibly something like the energy the neurons are sending, but it's energy we can define, that we can measure, that you can see it light up on an MRI.
Yeah, if I can go ahead, first of all, I would like to note that Tom has made another fallacy, which is the argument from authority. Well, he has not shown which authorities deny the fact that there are mental facts, for example, that exist, and mind is all physical. For example, I imagine you wouldn't subscribe to Daniel Dennett's idea we're all basically robots and free will doesn't exist, or at least consciousness is an illusion.
I have an answer for that.
Yes, go ahead.
So we are We have a robotic layer, or I would say a layer that deals with the information processing, the sensory processing. But we have what I would say 2 additional layers. I would say we have sentience, which I define as long-term memory and a system of feelings that we can use. That's how we deal with the Pavlov's experiment. And then I would say there's one more layer on top of that, which is a self-awareness layer, is the ability to use metadata to then reflect and make new decisions. And the classic Isancel I do for that is, you were fine with breathing until I told you that you can control your breathing. And then all of a sudden, your body starts to take control of it. That is what I define as self-awareness. And the test I would use to define that is the mirror test.
All right, one sec. Let me respond to his argument from authority part. No, that isn't an argument from authority fallacy. An argument from authority fallacy is only using a false authority. If you're actually using a real authority, it's not a fallacy. It's the ad verecundium fallacy on Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy for logical fallacies. You can just Google it. It's only a fallacy if you're using a false authority. My authority in this case, were a quote from Julian Mussolino, cognitive scientist. Most, in fact, the overwhelming majority of people in my line of work are what's called materialists or physicalists. So nope, not an argument from authority. It is supported by actual experts in the field. In fact, the majority of them. Okay, that's it. Done.
I mean, but we're evaluating the philosophical ontology of consciousness. We're not evaluating the scientific opinions of it. So something that would be a valid authority would be like a percentage of philosophers that are physicalists versus emergentists and that's kind of the point I was going to go with addressing Amy on. The thing is that this kind of like basic appeal to science to try to justify the existence of consciousness on a purely physical level ignores not just the phenomena, not just the phenomena, but it ignores, for example, you talked a little bit about how reason, has evolved to try to benefit us, as competitive to plants and fungi. But the problem is
I'd say
that
consciousness.
Oh, sorry, consciousness. I apologize. That was a misstep. No, but my point is that consciousness, that if you read somebody like Alvin Plantinga, there's not really any reason to think that consciousness would favor truth. It would only really favor survivability, things that would lead to us. I mean, it doesn't matter.
Sure, we do favor truth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it does exactly. Well, that's kind of the point. I mean, but then there's the other problem that if all my thoughts are ultimately atoms and just molecules, I really have no reason to think those things would lead me toward truth, and therefore I have no real reason to postulate my brain is made of atoms. If ultimately they are just meaningless particles that have no intentionality.
I would take the word meaningless out. Just call them particles.
Well, particles they don't have any reason or meaning unless you think.
Yeah,
we can actually say what the meanings are and how they interact.
Well, what is that intentionality? Maybe you can expand on that. Okay.
Can you expand on Tom directly? Do you have any argument for why disembodied minds cannot exist? Is there any argument?
Because they could.
Yes, because consciousness is a mechanism of the brain. It actually develops.
How do you know that? How do you know that?
Because
are you familiar with hard problem of consciousness?
Yes, I don't believe it.
I think that we probably
you do not believe it. That's an argument from incredulity.
Hold on one
That's
second.
a personal lack of.
I believe I've solved the mind-body problem. Would you like me to answer it?
I think the original question from Canadian Catholic was, I don't know what it was, but I think Amy was.
So my original question was, do you have an argument, specifically Tom, but Amy would be appreciated too, for why a disembodied mind cannot exist? What is an argument specifically?
All mechanisms of our body have been naturally selected. Consciousness is a mechanism of the body. Therefore, consciousness has been naturally selected for the benefit of our body.
Catholic. Just have
if you'd like to point out where in the syllogism is wrong, I'll take it. Also, I wanted to bring up Zeno's paradox because that's the
Just
whole
a second.
motion
Do you understand
thing,
that
right?
assertions are easy? How do
It's
you
not an
know
assertion, it's an
this is
argument. If you
physical?
can point
You're
out which part of the
presupposing something
premises
that
aren't
has
right.
to be shown.
Okay, hold on. I appreciate that you guys. Everybody has spirit, which is
Apologize.
great. We appreciate your passion. But we do just have to be sure that we'll do like one question at a time, and we'll let Amy or whoever it is have a chance to respond. So, I think what the last question was from Canadian Catholic. What was the last question you had asked?
Yeah, the
Are
last.
there
Well,
any
well,
arguments that
yeah.
can
So the
indicate
argument for
a-
why a disembodied mind cannot exist. What is the
Okay.
argument for that?
I would like to know why a disembodied head would exist. Like, what is the reason? Why does God exist? Like,
No,
why?
the question is, has there been an argument provided from Tom? Because Tom says,
Yes.
willing to
Well, I don't
grant
know
a
about.
first cause, but he's not willing to grant a disembodied mind. I want to hear an
Let's talk
argument
about
for
the
why
first
this is
cause.
impossible. Because if it is not, then this becomes automatically more possible given what has been from this first cause.
But would you admit that a disembodied brain makes no sense?
I didn't say a disembodied brain.
A disembodied. Well,
How
okay.
can-
So the mind, I consider the operating system of the brain.
Assertions are easy, proofs are hard. You're simply asserting something without providing a single argument or engaging with what we have provided.
Would you be able
Clearly refuted your
to
position. You're
point
simply
out where
reasserting
in the
what you already
syllogism?
said.
Okay.
Will you at least grant me that syllogism has been naturally selected?
Why are you changing the topic? That's a red herring. We are talking about mental facts, which you have not.
Yes. There's no reason for a
asserted.
disembodied brain to exist. You would actually have to
Disembodied
prove that
brain
a
is not what
disembodied
a
brain can
disembodied
exist.
brain is a contradiction. We're talking about a
I
disembodied.
agree. That's why
You know
God
the
doesn't
subject.
exist.
Okay.
So he did ask me, so let me try to
Yeah,
answer the
absolutely.
question. So no, there's no logical contradiction with a non-physical mind. That's definitely possible, but there's no reason to believe it. Inductively, we only have evidence for any physical mind or a mind that is from a brain. So inductively, we can rule that out as having no basis at all, just kind of a fairy tale that we've made up like leprechauns. And so that's a good enough reason to exclude the possibility. And there's no actual reason to think it could do anything. Only
Wait,
natural explanation.
Just to clarify before I
I'd be
let
open to
someone
it.
take the
Well,
floor. Tom-
1 second. I wanted to also respond
Yeah,
to what
sorry.
Sterling said, because Sterling and I have just been sitting back here just listening. So Sterling said that the argument from authority would be from philosophers. No, philosophers get no say in this at all. Philosophers are only post hoc explaining what we already know. Science takes authority over science in pretty much everything, because science is the confirmed methods we have to differentiate what's imaginary and what's real. Philosophy is just post hoc in that respect. So science always takes authority in those respects. Concerning Plantinga, Plantinga's theory of evolutionary truth has been essentially debunked. It's rejected in every field, mostly by philosophers especially. There have been a number of rebuttals showing that no, actually it can select for truth in numerous ways. And even if we do accept your premise that philosophers are the authority, if we look at the Phil Surveys paper, the authorities in philosophy agree with my position. They are mostly naturalists and physicalists also.
I'm going to cede the floor to Sterling in a second, but just for everyone to confirm, you admit that you have no argument against the existence of a disembodied mind. You're not saying it's impossible. You're not saying there is no contradiction. You're saying it's a perfectly viable thing. You're not saying that there is any contradiction within it.
Well, there are definitely arguments against them, but it's not a logical contradiction.
Okay, that's what I wanted you to concede. Okay, thank you. Now I'm ceding the floor.
Okay, so for one, I don't think it is sufficient. Well, okay, so obviously it depends on your perspective of how you approach philosophy, but ultimately, if the point of philosophy is to start at basic ontology, then they would be and that's at least my position. My position is that philosophers start at ontology, and if they start at ontology, like Heidegger's, what is the most important question? What is being? If you start at that basic point, then they are the authority on what is, or at least in terms of arguments about ontology. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about what exists. That's a field of philosophy. Now, you do say that the Phil papers say that the majority of them are physicalists and the majority of them are naturalists. One, there's a slight problem with that. It's true that majority of them are physicalists, but there are so many different forms of physicalism, and there's different types of ways you can define physicalism. There's emergentism. There's you got somebody like Churchland in California who believes that essentially what the position contra Plantinga, contra reason, that there really isn't reasons for things. There are just brain states. So it's a much more complex field. I mean, you could argue that somebody like Searle's position is property dualism, for example.
Yes.
But okay, let's just keep going into the whole, because I wanted to respond to a little bit to Amy a little bit. I don't claim that God is a consciousness, so her argument doesn't really apply to me. If you look at the Fourth Lateran Council, nullum discrimen inter creatorem et creaturas est meus. Ergo, there's nothing bigger than the difference between creation and creator. And so my argument from the Catholic perspective is that you don't have to take God as a consciousness. He only has to be a couple of things. He only has to be the thing that started the universe, one, and something that's extremely powerful, and worthy of worship. Now, and again, so a consciousness is something that exists. I would agree that consciousness exists inside a brain. But there are different kinds of properties that we attribute to God analogically that are not univocally applicable.
Can I also mention that in our brain, there is not a single physical function that we perform, a single physical function that we could not also perform without consciousness.
Like, how about our heart beating?
There has been no engagement with the fact that there are mental facts. For example, experience of color. This is a mental fact. What is the engagement from the other side with these argumentations? There is none. There is just reassertion. And there are shocking mistakes. Disembodied brain mixed up with disembodied mind. I'm just saying these are amateur mistakes. And I'm not trying to be insulting or throw anyone under the bus.
Can I just ask, you say you don't believe it's a consciousness. Are you a Christian?
I am a Catholic.
I don't remember
You're
saying
Catholic.
Yeah.
Well, I know Canadian Catholic is.
I wanted to try to understand that too.
but-
When you say God isn't a consciousness, is there a difference between your view and, say, pantheism, where there's it's just everything is divine, just the universe, no mind at all?
I think pantheism is a little vague. So I would equate it closer to panentheism in the sense that the whole world is okay. So ultimately, as a Thomist, you believe that God wills the universe into existence. But if God is being in subsistence in of itself and holds the universe together, then you have to think of God as beyond that. It's like I said, ipsum subsistens esse.
Right,
So
right. Panentheism says that God is both the universe and more than the universe. He's outside of space and time. But I'm asking, does God have a mind? Is it
no,
personal?
not in the way we have a mind. No, certainly
Well,
not.
I'm not asking in the way we have a mind.
It had a son?
Is it conscious? Does it have thoughts? Can it? Does it? Or is it like?
It doesn't have thoughts. No, he doesn't have thoughts.
Is it more like the cup, or is it more like me?
It's not really like either. More like you, I guess.
No. This is just more like. So the cup has.
I would guess more like you, but not. It's kind of difficult.
So the atheist position is more like the cup, and the theist position is more like a person, right?
But he's not a person.
It doesn't matter. Again, this is just comparatively. The atheist position is it's more like a cup, and the theist position is that it's more like a person.
I'm not Tom, and I'm trying not to interrupt you to
That's fine.
Polite, but and also try not to step on anybody's toes. But I don't think that that's necessarily the case. Because so I don't know how familiar you are with Thomism.
Pretty familiar.
But okay, so then you're familiar with like aprophatism or apropheticism, like in terms of theology. Like right. that we can't really say too much positive about God. We can say what he's not, and he's not like people in almost every way. There's only like,
but as far as I know, most Thomists do think he has a mind and is conscious.
I wouldn't agree. I wouldn't agree.
They agree that those terms can't necessarily apply to God. They're not sufficient to describe God. They're only analogous in some sense. But they're
analogous, but they're only analogous. Like, so for example, okay, I'll just try to explain like a basic level, and just because I think it's kind of a red herring to the whole the whole argument, really, and also because I know that Canadian Catholic really wants to talk about consciousness. Okay, so for example, when you say that God has an intellect, right?
Yeah,
it means that he has understanding. He understands the whole universe, but that only comes from the fact that God is literally being itself. Everything that exists is willed into existence. He doesn't have a mind like we do. He doesn't see something, understand it, and process and things like that. He doesn't have a brain, so he doesn't do that kind of thing. And
why does he exist?
Yes.
Well, so that's part of my argument, right? It's necessary for him to exist based on the argument. It's not like, but all these properties that people put on God are like extra metaphysical kind of like, I don't know, it's feel good stuff.
I also want to engage with Tom's argument. I think, Tom,
Good.
that what what you're saying is not necessarily something that basically it could be a red herring, because we don't have to know the mechanism of action of God's consciousness to believe in it. What we have to do is,
Well, that wasn't an argument. I was just
And then
literally asking him. I was like, I want to understand his position.
I
wasn't actually
understand, but
making an argument.
I don't need to know the mechanism of action. You have
I
already
didn't say you did.
that there could be a first cause, and you made a concession that there is nothing inherently contradictory about
Right.
disembodied minds. Now, the third one that I'm waiting for you to make, the third concession, is why do you object to mental facts? What is your response to the fact, for example, the experience of color is a mental fact and not a physical fact? And if you concede
Answer
all
that.
three, then once again, why aren't you considering this as a serious possibility? You started out saying there is no argument at all for God.
Right.
Look
There
how
isn't.
much you're willing to
Well,
concede.
there's
Do
no
you
evidence for God.
notice why we object to your position?
So, right. So there is no evidence for God at all. None of your
That's
arguments
just
in
the
any
self-repetition.
way.
That's just repeating.
So
That's not
stop,
engaging with what we
stop.
present to you.
That's
Sorry,
that's the
apologies.
next sentence. That's the next sentence. So there is, I am correct in my original statement. There is no evidence for the existence of God. None of the things you presented are evidence. So my argument against the color analogy, why isn't color like red a mental state, is because it's just an unknown. Like do we know what causes color? No. Could it be potentially like idealism?
That's not the question. The question was the experience.
Stop. So again, any mental states, any experience, any quality experience, whether color or shape or anything, could all be idealistic. It could be a mental thing, or it could be a physical thing. The fact that we have them tells us nothing. It's the same fallacy that Descartes used when he tried to use, I think, the 4am to show dualism. It doesn't work. The fact that we have a quality experience of redness doesn't tell us what that experience is. It could be idealistic, it could be materialistic, it could be dualistic. It tells us nothing. So right now it's just here's something we don't know. All of the evidence of everything we've ever discovered is all physical. So it's reasonable to infer it's probably going to be physical. Asserting this new property that we have no evidence for of this mental stuff is just ad hoc. There's no basis for it. If I could just say it's blurry blah blah blah, and then that would be equally as reasonable as concluding that it's its own ontology of stuff.
Can I just recap real quick? You're willing to concede that there can be a first cause. You're further willing to
Yes.
that this first cause can be responsible for something like the human consciousness, and you're willing
Sure.
to concede that there is nothing wrong with this first cause potentially being, there's no logical contradiction with this first cause being a disembodied mind.
Correct. There's also no logical contradiction with it being a leprechaun or a unicorn or a
That's a
magic
total
pixie.
that's a total red
No.
herring. You've
That is
conceded the validity of the argument for the first cause.
Canadian
That's
Catholic.
wait. I want to respond to that. So
Absolutely.
the reason that debunks your entire argument is, again, evidence is only that which can differentiate between what's imaginary and what's real. So if I can make all the same concessions and insert an imaginary thing like leprechauns or magical pixies or unicorns, that shows it's not evidence because it can't differentiate.
What was
imaginary.
just a second? I would like to press you on the Mary's room thing. What is your evidence after the Mary's room? What is your conclusion?
Mary's room is nothing. Mary's room is just a philosophical analogy.
What is it?
We can't
What do you
understand.
object to? Where is the premise wrong? What do
I
you
have to
object to in
actually
Mary's room?
look at them in detail.
You
to
do not
figure it
even
out.
know what it is, and you
Off the top of my head, I
said
don't need to. Again, since it's
So
not.
what is your
accepted in
object?
any
What is the
serious
problem with it?
philosophical-
What is the
Again,
wrong
I don't
with
need to.
premises?
I can just say it's not accepted in any scientific field because no one cares. And
Oh,
that's
so
the
you're
reason.
not even going to be engaging with these arguments?
I can go ahead. Tell me what it is. I'll be happy to.
Okay, so Mary's. Oh, so you do not know what thought experiment is?
Off
Well,
the top of my head, no, I don't. Like,
with
I
the
don't have
experiment-
all
are you
arguments
familiar-
memorized.
oh, that's fine. That's fine. I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus. Are you familiar with the Mary's room thought experiment, Amy?
I'm looking at it right now on the internet, but not thoroughly.
Okay,
And
so
what
when
is
you
it?
look it up, you've made several assertions there. To be fair to Tom Jump, to be
What
fair,
is it?
he's not
Tell
the
us
one
what it
that brought
is.
up the consciousness thing. I'm going to be fair to him.
That's my shtick. I get it.
You brought it up, and you do
Mhm.
not even know the key objections to it. How, like, I mean, I'm not trying to
What's
throw
the
anyone
key
under the bus, but
objections?
I was this unprepared. The whole chat would be piling up on me right now.
Could you tell us what Mary's room is?
I don't
Just
think I'm
stop.
unprepared.
This is just ad homs. Could you like tell us what the argument is?
Well, the argument basically boils down that there are mental life experience of color. Mary could know everything.
Oh, I can explain that. That's
about-
what I'm, I can explain
Mary
color
could,
if you
just
like.
a second, just a second. Mary could know every physical fact there is to know about color, but the experience of color will gain her some new insight in it because the experience itself is something that produces non-physicality. Sorry, I apologize. The experience itself is a non-physical. So, like, I mean, I'm sure you've read it up. Either some of you have remembered or maybe you read it up. So I would like to see the engagement because Tom asserted that everything we know is physical. And
What? No, I didn't say that. So, but I'm happy to address that. So again, Mary's room is exactly like dark matter. If I know every physical fact about what's a universe is, I still couldn't tell you anything about dark matter because it's not one of the known physical facts. So Mary's room doesn't tell us anything. It doesn't tell us brains are physical or
So is it your assertion
experiences.
that Mary learns something new when she experiences red after knowing every single fact about the color red?
Yes, just like you can experience something new if I like.
What
give you a
new is
new
she
name.
learning? What is the new
Conceptual.
thing she's
It's
learning?
conceptual. It's non-physical. It's not.
So there you
things.
go. You've admitted that
No,
mental
no, no,
facts
no, no, no.
exist.
Again, that's not a thing. So Harry Potter, I can teach you about Harry Potter and you've learned a new thing and it's not a physical thing because no physical things in the universe are going to tell you about
How
Harry
is
Potter.
that not a red herring?
Because it's the exact same thing. It's like the rules of chess. I could tell you all of the physical facts about the rules of chess, the chessboard, or I could tell you all of the material facts, all of the particles. I can give you all their positions. It will never give you the rules of chess. To give you the rules of chess, I have to tell you because those are not things that are themselves physical in that sense. They are conceptual. So the
Is it
color
your
red
argument?
is like the rules of chess. It is a subjective thing contingent on how the brain works. So just seeing the brain isn't going to tell you what it looks like, just like seeing the chessboard isn't going to tell you what the rules of chess are.
Is it your assertion that healthy eyes and brain perceive the color red in a different way?
Potentially.
So I don't
your argument is?
believe that
Well, I have no
colors
idea.
are
What?
subjective. In fact, I've struggled to find anything subjective in the human brain. Even when we talk about subjective, say we were to take, I have an apple. How does it taste to eat that apple? Well, if we really wanted to, we could go through all of the facts. We could say, well, how much water did the apple have? Did it have good sunlight? Was it picked well? How long until he ate the apple? Does he have genes that respond well to an apple, and does he have memories of good experiences with apples? And I feel like we could sit there and take every single point and brush away the subjectivity into objectively why someone likes apples. In the same respect, the color red is a frequency, and it's your brain and your eyes' best ability to decipher that code. Now, you could say I could take that wavelength and I could put it into a hex code, into a digital representation. And you could ask, what does it mean for a computer to feel whatever the hex code is for red? But you ask, what does a human feel for red? Well, it's our body's organs best trying to translate that data into usefulness as
Those are
best as it
facts.
can. And any type of subjectivity that I could see would squeak in is because humans aren't perfect machines. And so you're going to get people who have trouble with their brains deciphering red. That's not subjective. That is the brain doing its best job trying to get you that
I'm just going
information.
to say a sentence, and I'm going to just say briefly because I'm sorry, Tom. I've been interrupting you. I have to apologize for that because I've been cutting you over, and I didn't mean to. Sometimes it gets. But let me try to recap something. Mr. Jump has conceded that given that Mary knows.
I haven't conceded anything. These are literally the things that are on the
Yes.
first videos on my YouTube channel. We already know
Sure.
these things.
I apologize. So Mr. Jump has at least said, okay, don't like that word, that Mary knows every single fact. And in the thought experiment, she knows every single fact, including how brain subjectively interprets things, what wavelengths. And there is something mental, this is what we call mental facts, that she learns, and new information that comes in with the experience of color red. So now the question comes in again. If Mr. Jump is willing to concede that there is a first cause, even for the sake of argument, I'm not even saying that, then he's willing to concede that this first cause factually produced parts of the universe that are conscious, that
Yes.
experience consciousness.
Yes.
There is a possibility and even probability of mental facts. What is
No.
against the idea that this first cause is a disembodied mind. What is the argument against this? I haven't seen, and if it isn't an argument against this, I do not see how our position, or at least ours, hasn't at least doesn't gain an advantage.
Right. So that's a burden of proof fallacy. I don't need to present an argument against it at all. You need to present evidence for it. So again, the same thing applies to leprechauns and unicorns and magic pixies. Is it possible that the first cause is a leprechaun or unicorn or magic pixie? Yeah, it is. There's not a logical contradiction there. But if someone's supporting the leprechaun hypothesis, right now it has zero evidence. The fact it's possible isn't evidence. They would actually have to show that this has a more, or is not an imaginary alternative. It's not just a made up possibility, it's a real one. That's the difference. That's why there's no evidence for a God, because it's just like magic pixies or leprechauns. You don't have a way to differentiate. Is it real?
How do you know that it's a magic?
I just kind of want to point out that I'm the only one who's offering arguments for the existence of God right now.
I know, right?
we're talking about, we're in the mud with consciousness, but
Oh yeah, you haven't responded to my point yet that you
sorry,
don't
I was kind of waiting for them to, get through what they wanted to talk about.
Apologies. I may.
No worries. I mean, can you or just reiterate the minor points? I forgot what you had said.
Yeah, my rebuttal to your point was that there's no need for a mind. Like when atheists and theists in contemporary scholarship have a debate, they're debating, they agree there is some fundamental nature to reality. The atheists think there is no mind there. There is no non-physical consciousness that exists. The theist thinks there is a consciousness that exists at the fundamental nature. So I don't know what your position is on that exactly, because I mean, most Thomists, if I've asked them this exact same question, is God more like me or is God more like the cup? They always say God's more like me. They do agree it's a consciousness in some vague analogous sense. So that's the debate between atheists and theists. Atheists say, nope, it's not that. Theists say it is that. And as far as we can tell, there's no reason that it would need to be a consciousness, or nothing that a consciousness can explain that a non-consciousness couldn't. Therefore, the first mover may be conscious, but there's no reason to think that it could be not.
Right. Okay. Now I understand what you're saying. Good. Because sorry, it was mixed up in a lot of different things. I was a little confused. So let me just address that kind of. Let me just address that on layers. So one, I think consciousness is a really ambiguous thing, for one. I think it involves a lot of different things: sensation, intellect, will. I think there's a lot of just observation. There's a lot of things that when we say consciousness, we're really talking about human processes. And I don't think that the debate between atheists and theists is about, I'll just say that I don't think it is about whether the fundamental nature of reality is a consciousness. I think that, and I'm representing Thomism here, and I think not all Thomists, not all scholastics would agree with this, but a lot of them would. What we can say about God is very limited, but we can say he's pure act. Now, he doesn't have consciousness because he's not a brain. Consciousness is something that comes from brains and animals and things like that. But he would have, for example, if he's pure act, we can draw other conclusions about him. He would understand everything. So this is kind of why I wanted to dive a little bit into the argument earlier, kind of go through. I don't know how much, James, can you just tell me how much time we have until this is over?
Oh God, please do not just go into the Thomistic definitions upon definitions.
I know.
Definitions.
It's going to be fun, right?
I'd say maybe 20 more minutes of open discussion.
Just can we skip to the end? Where's the argument part? Because you haven't gotten there.
Well, I presented the syllogism in the beginning, and then if we can break it down, and go through it, so that we can talk about the argument. But I'm not going to go into definitions upon definitions because you've conceded to a lot of the argument. We're just going to talk about
I can grant your entire argument in the introduction, but it doesn't indicate a God. So when atheist talks about a God, they mean some kind of consciousness. It doesn't matter if you like that word or not. So why would the atheist be wrong? That's you need to present that. That's your premise.
So my side is that the pure act. When I say if there's something that's pure act, that has implications, right? I mean, I think we can agree on that. Something that has no change. So what would it mean to not change? For example.
Well, change is, again, the subjective metric that we made up in our heads. It isn't necessarily an ontological thing, kind of like time.
Well, then you couldn't grant the argument because premise 1A would be wrong. Nothing would really be in motion. You see what I'm saying? Because everything would be not in motion.
That's again wrong. It's assuming that change is somehow an ontological fact that it applies to the world and isn't just a made-up category that we have. It's too abstract. It doesn't mean anything. It's kind of like time. We thought time.
Well, but then you can't really grant the first one if it doesn't really exist.
I can. You can have motion without change. It's totally possible.
Okay. Well, that's what I'm talking about, though. Motion basically is change. It's going from potentiality to actuality.
Change is an abstract concept that we apply to things. It isn't an ontology. So we can have motion without change. No problem.
How do you have motion without
And
change?
Sterling,
Quantum
would
physics.
you agree that most of Zeno's
Yep.
paradoxes have, at least mathematicians claim, have been solved by calculus?
I don't really see what the argument is there. Sure, but
Because they
and
can
you
work
know
in
that
infinities, and they can.
well, the point actually. So interesting that you say that, and I'm not trying to interrupt you. I love your accent, by the way. It's really nice. But okay, so actually Aristotle, to go into a little bit of history, he developed the idea of potentiality and actuality to solve Zeno's paradox and to solve the Parmenidean paradigm of change, actually. So while there is potentially an infinite number of steps between the first and the for example, the tortoise and the Spartan, if they're racing or whatever that is, there's an actual limited amount of space. So even though that you could potentially cut it up into however many parts, there's only an actual amount of space, even though there's a potential infinite amount of steps, right? So, I mean, that would only support my argument of anything. Or, well, it's not even support. It's kind of like a tangent.
But you do get there.
Well,
you could say it takes infinite, that it could
yeah.
go on endlessly, but yet how long does it take to walk 10 feet? Just a minute, or
an actual amount, and that's right.
Still waiting for the argument. So Aristotle did invent potential and actual infinites, but he believed in a past infinite. So he believed that the infinite past just went on forever, but it was just a potential infinite. So, but I'm still. Let me see if I can skip all of the explanation and try and give you your own argument.
See if we can.
You believe that act requires some kind of will-based decision, right?
Oh yeah, or decision, but yeah. I mean,
I'm not sure. I'm just going to try and get.
It has to be willed. Yeah, the universe has to be willed into existence. There have to have been a point where there was nothing, and then there was something. And in order to do that, you have to have a will. You have to have.
Well, no. So that's the first part, is that there can't be a nothing, because the will has to exist for there to go from nothing to something. So there can't be a.
But there would just be no change, though. It'd be stasis.
That's fine. But you can have that with quantum mechanics. So anything a will can do, quantum mechanics can do.
But isn't a will something we find in high-level agencies? Like, we don't even find it in most of life. Like, the vast majority of life, the single-celled organisms, fungi, plants, they have as far as we could tell, no will. So most of the universe, including most of life, doesn't have will. It's for seemingly mammals and birds to make these sort of self-awareness, or animals. I shouldn't say mammals and birds, animals. Right. So why would a god have will?
Okay, so let's break that down. So are you familiar with Aristotle's four causes?
Maybe.
So the efficient cause, material cause, the formal cause, and the final cause.
I believe this is what Thomas Aquinas borrowed from.
Yeah, a lot of them did. A lot of people do. The fourth, so we do see will in nature. We see things driving toward ends. So, for example, when we see, you can see it in a lot of different ways. I mean, mainly in the laws of physics and way things that have natures behave. And that's kind of like what I wanted to lead into in the beginning. Well, actually, I think that the concept of laws is really problematic unless you have nature. If you have an essentialist nature of objects.
Oh, I believe in nature.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you believe that things operate in certain ways, then they have to have an internal force driving them toward that, their own form, as it were, like whatever makes them what they are. And this is kind of what I wanted to touch on when Tom grabs my whole argument, it's kind of hard to go into the details and say, okay, this is why I believe this. Now so that's kind of what we're diving into here a bit. So one of the reasons why you would believe in real change is if you wanted to believe in science, for example.
I believe in science.
Well, that's good. I believe in science too, to some extent. But the problem, if you haven't noticed, that the problem with science is that you have this kind of this postulated entity of scientific laws that are kind of just mysterious. They just exist based on our models of reality that we just extrapolate these figures and things like that. But they're not really explained to what they actually are, where they even come from. When we could talk about
logical absolutes.
We can talk. Well, yeah, we're getting there, right?
Yeah. So again, I can just preempt your argument and say, yes, there does have to be some kind of nature to reality, but that nature doesn't have to come from mind, will of any kind. So yes,
Well,
there
that's
does have to be some
but this
property.
actually leads into my argument, right? So that's what grants the whole idea of potentiality and actuality as real metaphysical principles of the universe.
Well, I can grant those too and just say actuality doesn't have a will.
So you just granted it, but that means that God, or whatever the first mover, has to be pure act. Because if
I
it
can
had
grant
potentiality,
that. I can grant that
Okay,
it's pure
and then
act,
we-
and I can say it's
okay.
not a will.
okay,
I,
well,
I,
then
I
if
don't, I
it's
don't do
not
that. I could.
pure
So
act.
I don't actually
okay.
accept that ontology, but for the sake of argument, I can grant all of the Thomistic ontology and just say pure act doesn't have a will, and you get rid of the theism entirely.
What
And
do
atheists
you,
are
how
right.
it, okay, so how do you get from stasis to a universe without a will?
Quantum mechanics.
Well, no,
Anything
because there
that a
wouldn't be
will-
any quantum mechanics. There would be
Yeah, there
would just be
quantum
the
mechanics-
stasis.
No, quantum
There
mechanics
would
can
just
exist.
literally be the
No,
stasis.
quantum mechanics can exist outside of space and time in the exact same way that pure act in Thomism.
What would
can.
it mean? Well, sorry, are you equating pure act with quantum mechanics then?
No, I'm saying that quantum
Because
mechanics
those are incompatible
can do,
properties.
No, quantum mechanics can do anything pure act can do. So anything that the pure act, the
Don't you think that
idea-
that's kind of vague? I mean, let's
Well,
expand upon that.
I
all of
still don't know
Thomism
what
is-
act is.
all of Thomism is extremely vague, but it's pretty bad. But so yeah, anything that you can explain with pure act as a will, you can explain with pure act as a quantum mechanical process. Because we do have
Right.
quantum mechanics that can exist outside of space and time and can exist in that kind of statistical stasis-y thing and do stuff. No problem.
Can you explain that?
Not exactly. It's Amplituhedron, Nima Arcani Hamad, or Emergent Spacetime by Sean Carroll. They can explain it.
See, that's not fair. You can't bring an argument where I have to read a book unless you're going to explain it. You have to
Excuse
explain
me,
it to me.
Excuse me, Mr.
No,
Thomas.
I would have explained the. Hey, I would have
So-
explained the whole thing. I have it all written down here. If you want me to go
So
into
that's the thing is that
nitty-gritty.
I can bring in science. Science actually supersedes any kind of philosophical argument. Even if I can't explain it.
I don't think
just-
so
I have
because
science.
science has some philosophical assumptions. Has
Sure it
way
does,
has
but
tons
that's
of
fine.
philosophical assumptions.
Sure it does, but
So-
science
Can
can
I
actually
be-
So
work.
is ontologically prior. Philosophy is ontologically
It doesn't matter if
prior
it's
to
prior
science.
because there's a difference between pure philosophy and science. Science can actually demonstrate the difference between imaginary and real. Philosophy can't.
Well, then you can't demonstrate that science is a valid form
No,
of
yes, you can
reasoning.
because science isn't just philosophy. Science is philosophy plus empiricism, whereas philosophy on its own can't.
What if you
Philosophy
don't
plus
believe in
can.
empiricism?
Then you don't
We
have
can empirically
TVs or
prove you're wrong.
airplanes or
You can-
buildings.
You can believe, but my point is, you can believe in science and not believe in empiricism. So
Oh, no,
it's not a necessary.
You're right. I'm not saying empiricism as the philosophy. I mean, science is philosophy plus empirical data. So it's those
Okay,
two
so empirical data,
concepts
not
added
empiricism.
together. Yeah. So
Okay. I disagree. I mean, it's not really. There is so much philosophical baggage upon science. One thing being scientific laws would be the philosophical baggage, or like scientific
No.
realism.
no, the
because
laws
there's a-
are all empirical.
Well,
The
okay.
laws
So,
aren't
for example,
assumed.
you could be no. Let me unpack that for a second. You could be a fictionalist about science, for example, right?
Sure.
And then the empirical data wouldn't really mean anything. It would just happen to work. So what I'm saying is that science is laden with these philosophical assumptions that you have to work through. Philosophy.
No, I agree.
would
With you.
determine-
That's not a problem. So science is the philosophical stuff plus the empirical data, and how you interpret that. There's lots of different ways to interpret that. But pure philosophy on its own, without that empirical data, is just junk because it can go anywhere. It doesn't have a way to differentiate. So the
Well, then how
philosophy
can if
plus
it's
is
just
good.
junk, how do you conclude that its reasonings about like what's true about science would even be?
Well, again,
valid?
so it's the science plus the empirical data. That's good. Science or philosophy plus the empirical data. That's good. Philosophy on its own is pointless. It's just
What would be the
arbitrary
point of
thinking.
it by itself, though?
Nothing.
Well,
It's
like
just
how
thinking.
would you even get there? Like how would you get to the point where because you're saying that you're adding empirical data to the philosophy.
Yes. Yes.
But how do you even get to the point where you have this kind of reasonable starting point of philosophy to start your science? The basic principles, I mean.
Yeah,
even
I
like first
imagine a
principles.
unicorn. I don't want to see a unicorn in front of me. I need some way to differentiate between these two categories. That's how.
Right. And so like we're going to talk about an ontology. So then we're going to go into ontology.
That doesn't
What
actually,
does it
not
even
an
mean to
ontology.
imagine something?
Well, that
Like that's what I
doesn't-
mean. That's what I mean. You get into these questions.
Well,
where
no. That doesn't say anything about ontology.
I
Like
can
maybe
explain
what
that.
I'm seeing could just
I
be,
would love to.
maybe what
to
I'm
hear your
seeing could
explanation.
just be imaginary. Maybe this is all part of my head and I'm a solid system. What I'm seeing is just a deeper level of my imagination. That's completely compatible with science. It doesn't care. All the science is asking is I imagine a unicorn. I don't see a unicorn. These are two different things. We need to figure out what's the difference between them or some way to differentiate. It doesn't tell us about ontology. It's purely epistemic. There's some
Okay,
difference
Thomas.
between that and that.
We need to have a meeting, and we need to discuss this further because I really want to. I don't want to just cut off Amy too much. That's all. But you have an idea what my response is going to be, right? I mean, come on.
I'm
know
not
where
sure.
I'm gonna
I
go.
can think about 12 different responses at this point. Which one would you go with?
My response. Well, I want to let Amy talk too, though.
I always feel like I'm over talking you guys.
Okay. Do you want to jump in, or do you want me just to keep
I
going?
wanted to ask both you and
Yeah.
Canadian Catholic, there is, at least within Einstein's equations, there is the ability to have repulsive gravity. And there is the hypothesis that whatever it is that started the inflation event, it was because of a repulsive event that is still happening right now. And that's why we see inflation, because we have a repulsive gravity event, and that could have been the Big Bang.
So, for example, we could just have a universe that expands and contracts, and didn't have a beginning. Is that kind of your argument?
Yeah, I'm not sure where even it would be nested, if you want to say in a multiverse or other things, but I do know within Einstein's equations, the possibility for repulsive gravity is there. It's rare, it's not what you normally see, but it is possible.
It's actually Alan Guth's inflation theory, to be specific.
Oh, there you go.
I wish I was that
CC.
familiar with physics.
Physics isn't my strongest one either. I'm a
So
biology
James,
person.
Okay.
what time do we have the Q&A? Because I'm kind of not caught up on the schedule. I'm sorry, I kind of missed out on that. I apologize.
Oh, was I going to respond to Amy, or was it just?
Oh no, sorry. I was just
No, it's fine. I just thought you were asking me too. I didn't. Or I think,
apologies.
right?
Apologies.
Oh,
apologies.
Because I know Catholics believe in the Big Bang, or at least most of them do.
Yeah. Wait.
So
So, I guess you could just say, well, there's a couple different ideas. Even if the universe was eternal, which, I mean, that would still make my argument would still require a first mover. Like, it would still need something to start the change in the very beginning. Even if there was no beginning, would still require. That's actually kind of Aquinas's idea, right? Because he says that even if Aristotle was right and there is no beginning of the universe, there has to be something which has the change here and now continuing. And that has to do with the essential series of causes. And Tom, I'm sure, is very familiar with that as well. But so that would be my response. Also, you do have people who say that the universe would run out of energy if it had been around forever, right? You have because so eventually we're going to go into heat death because there won't be any more energy in the universe. And if that were the case, then we would already, if the universe was actually eternal, then we would already be out of energy at this point. We would be in heat death because there's an infinite time past, if you think about it. So if there's an infinite time past, there's an infinite amount of time to reach heat death. And James, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but you can, answer Canadian Catholic's question.
No, it's okay. I would say we probably are to the point where we might kind of draw together the threads from tonight's debate. So, in other words, going into, I think Sterling got that reference. So we will kind of give you guys a few minutes. Everybody, if you want to take a little bit of time to kind of just summarize. Maybe we go, I think it would, just because otherwise we're going to have a bunch more rebuttals. If we go from either left to right or right to left, it might be better to go right to left since we had the atheist start in the on the watch screen. So for me, that would be the two theists going first, followed by the two atheists. And if anybody has a strong preference, we can go either way. But given that the atheist started, we can go in the reverse direction this time.
Okay, well, yeah, let's let Canadian Catholic go first, and then, I think that's fine, right, Tom and Amy. I think that.
Yeah. So to summarize to conclude myself, I do think that Tom and Amy obviously came prepared, and I want to first of all apologize for cutting them off. I kind of probably when the debate starts, you have there's maybe nerves or something, settle down more towards the end. And, they were prepared. But ultimately, I do think that our side was able to get more concessions than we had hoped for, at least in my humble opinion. I'm not saying that this is a fact. I'm just saying that I thought that, the idea that there is first cause, and this first cause is responsible for what we perceive as the universe, and then we have the mental facts, and that the consciousness could include mental facts, and the shocking concession, which I didn't expect that there is nothing wrong with the concept of disembodied minds. There's no logical contradiction. And I've debated several people on this topic. Notably, I've not debated people like, for example, Jack Engstrike, who actually present arguments arguing, no, this is not coherent. And to hear the concession that, disembodied minds are coherent, I thought that was a huge concession. But ultimately, I enjoyed the debate. So thank you, James, of course. And, Sterling, brilliant partner, and Tom and Amy were very well prepared. Please make sure to check out our links. Everyone's Tom's, James's, and our official Discord too. You can see that. Thanks once again, James. You were a wonderful moderator.
Thanks so much. Appreciate that, CC. My pleasure. And we'll kick it over to Sterling. So, Sterling, the floor is all yours.
Okay, I was muted. Sorry about that. So obviously this debate ended up going in two directions. They kind of made it hard to focus on one issue. Amy and Canadian Catholic want to kind of talk about consciousness more, which is fine. And me and Tom were kind of more, well, Tom, you engaged with the consciousness debate as well. And I kind of was just like, I want to talk about God, because that's what we were talking about. I would actually be, and I offer this to Amy and I offer this to Tom, that I would rather debate you guys individually anytime. Canadian Catholic was a great partner, just that I think that our approaches to debating are different. I would love to debate either on consciousness or on God's existence with Tom, or either, doesn't really matter. I don't know if Amy, if you have a channel, but I'd love to be on there. But yeah, so I thought that it went really well. I wish that we had... I wish we could have fleshed out the argument more, actually talked about what pure act means and talked about what kind of implications were there. I feel like we just kind of got into, it's because I was trying to be engaged with both sides and trying to, play both sides. So I apologize for that, but I'd like to thank Tom, I'd like to thank Amy, I'd like to thank Canadian Catholic for being here. And hopefully we can further this discussion in the future.
Thanks so much. We'll switch it over to TJump or Amy, either one of you, whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, sure. Sterling, definitely. Let's set something up sometime, because we got a few months of nothing planned for everyone, just off season. So might as well.
That's true.
So yeah, my position is still that there is no evidence for God at all. I do happen to grant that there is no contradiction with the non-physical mind. That's definitely possible. There's also no contradiction with magical pixie leprechauns. Is that evidence of magical pixie leprechauns? No. The fact that it's possible isn't evidence for something to be evidence. It has to be able to differentiate between what's imaginary and what's real. And as far as I can tell, all of the things presented by both of our theists tonight have presented none of that. They just said, the universe has a beginning. Yes, it does. Not the God. And there's consciousness. Yes, there is. Not a God. We experience things and we can't explain them. Yes, that's true. Not evidence of a God. And that was essentially all the arguments I remember. Not really any evidence for a God as far as I could tell. But yeah, thanks for both guys for coming on. Thanks for James for having us. Thanks for Steven Steen for the large donation that he gave. That's great. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
You're on the floor, Amy, all yours.
Okay. And so I would just like to thank James, Sterling, and Canadian Catholic. Well, it was awesome. TJump, you were an awesome partner. Thank you for allowing me to, this is my first debate. It was awesome. In conclusion, I believe that consciousness is a mechanism. It's really what separates us from plants, fungi, and single-celled bacteria. And I believe when you try to prescribe that to other entities, that it just doesn't make sense. It breaks down, and there's no purpose for them to exist. But yeah, it was a fun debate.
Thank you very much, Amy. We will jump right into the Q&A, folks. So we got a good number of questions, so we're going to try to fly through this as fast as possible. First up, Stupid Whore Energy. Thanks for your super chat. She says, I'm suing Tom for giving me epilepsy. Yes, Tom is still flashing green on his screen. I remember my first time plugging in an HDMI. Okay, next up.
It's actually because there's a storm going on, so I can't control it. It's not I can't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next up. Steven C, thanks for your super chat, who says, Stupid Whore Energy super chats last night. Perfect. She's a nasty. Yeah, she got pretty crazy last night. Steven C, thanks for your super chat, who says, congrats, CC and Sterling, for your objectively easy win over Tom. Oh,
Thank you so
Tom.
much. Thank you so much.
Okay, it's very nice.
I want to be defeated too. This is not just kidding.
Let's see. So, Steven Steen, our benevolent troll that hangs out here. Stupid Horror Energy, thanks for your super chat, who says, how does Sterling deal with violations of causation, such as virtual particle pairs and the Stern-Gerlach experiment?
Oh, I don't think that they really are examples of violations of causation. Even if you grant like that there are no efficient causes for virtual particles, that they still arise out of the quantum vacuum, which is a thing that has properties, and it's not just nothing, for example.
Gotcha.
Like
There is
it's a different. It could even just be like a different type of cause. It could be a formal cause instead of a final cause, for example.
Gotcha. Moving forward, Steven Steen, thanks so much for your super chat, who says, Sterling is a Bernie bro. Are you a Bernie bro?
I'm not a Bernie bro.
Okay.
I'm not a Trump bro.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
No, I'm a no bro.
You got it. Kang024, thanks for your super chat, who says, question for the theists. Can God create a rock that he cannot lift?
My quick answer will be, if I can go first.
Sure.
Oh, that's a logical contradiction. That's like asking, can God not be God? So this is the common misunderstanding of the.
So your answer is no?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, my answer is that, yeah, God, I'm going further than most. I'm saying God cannot create that, because that's a misunderstanding of our how we understand, or at least have understood omnipotence. With omnipotence, what we mean usually is the maximal power. But there are certain things that God cannot do, and the Bible is clear about it. God cannot stop being God. God cannot be unjust. God cannot lie. These are things that go fundamentally against his nature. So my answer is going to be no, and I'm not saying that this is Sterling's answer. I welcome disagreement.
Gotcha.
Medieval people who study logic proved that kind of statement is meaningless.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Next up, super chat from, let's see, we got Dwayne Burke. Appreciate it. Good seeing you again. Dwayne says the CIA and Stanford research proved consciousness can separate from the body via astral travel. The documentation is all there on the CIA FOI library. Tom.
Very skeptical of that.
That's yeah. NASA and scientists are going to be real surprised by this, that they actually discovered that non-physical brains are possible. It's going to be great. I'm going to be waiting for that Nobel Prize. It's definitely going to be awarded in the year that whatever this paper is published, for sure.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. Next up, Nathan Foster. Thanks for your super chat, who says Dwayne Burke designed TJump's clam chair. It's very nice.
I don't know who that is.
Dwayne Burke was the last person who gave the super chat about the CIA, and
yes.
So
yes.
Very nice. Two birds with one
This
stone.
chair is Dwayne Burke's father, as James would say.
That's very nice. I
Dun,
like
dun,
that.
dun.
Yes, exactly. Stupid Horror Energy. Thanks for your super chat. She says, "Are you guys familiar with Boltzmann brains?"
Yes.
I just heard about that the other day.
Unfortunately, I
stuff.
have to say no. I have to concede that I'm not familiar with it.
A Boltzmann brain is the idea that in certain quantum mechanical things where things can pop into existence, it's possible that there's a universe where just a brain and only the brain has just popped into existence quantum mechanically, and it exists on its own, kind of like a solipsistic brain in a universe. That's the idea of a Boltzmann brain, and that those would exist. There'd be more universes like that than there would be universes that were life permitting like ours or something like that.
And the problem with them is that there's no been proof, and we haven't been in the universe long enough for that sort of brain to pop out. And we have been in the universe long enough for regular brains to pop in.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. We got Duncan Atheism in the house. Oh my goodness. Duncan Atheism, we'd love to have you back on.
Yes, I want to
Tom
debate him
Jump wants
yes.
his father to, he wants you to come back for a good old father-son matchup. So Duncan, if you're there, by the way, it's true. I don't know, mods, if you guys are, unless he's using hate speech, which I highly doubt, please don't censor Duncan Atheism, even if he's Duncan Atheism. Just kidding, Duncan. Okay, next up, appreciate that. We have Stupid Horror Energy. Says, "Hi, Steen, how are ya?" Talking to Steven Steen, who says, "I am not Stupid Whore Energy in his own super chat. Thanks for that. Steven Steen says, Stupid Whore Energy, I'm good. I'm just looking at pictures of James. Seriously, nasty guy. Stupid Whore Energy says, me too. Very good. So you guys are weird. Steven Steen, thanks for your super chat, who says, I have tons from Dallas. Okay, that's kind of true. But Steven Steen, thanks for your super chat, who says, amazing super chats last night. Mint in all capital letters. That must be what the young people are saying. Is that what people are saying nowadays, Sterling?
Yes, they are.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
The youngest one here, I think. Am I the youngest one here? I don't know.
Nathan Foster, thanks for your super chat, who says, bees pollinate plants, they produce our oxygen and breathe the CO2 that we breathe out. Without either one, we would be done for. Thank you, Lord.
Okay.
Who's that for?
I like bees too. Bees
I
are
like
awesome.
the bees.
I like bumblebees. They're cool.
Gotcha. Let's see. Appreciate that. The Stolen Earth, would you consider a debate with an atheist against a Satanist? Yes, we would. We would indeed. So thanks so much for your super chat from Cam Spears, who says, for Canadian Catholic, can you explain how and why you repeatedly harassed members of the academic biblical criticism Discord server to the point of even using your mom in the server as a ventriloquist dummy?
Oh, that's actually a fan of mine. This is a running joke. We kind of make these super chats for each other to kind of poke fun at each other. It's really funny. Ignore. I didn't know he would actually do a super chat here. I thought he was joking with it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he's a fan of mine. And yeah,
you bet. Philip, thanks for your super chat. Who says, for the theist, what predictions can you make from proposing that God created everything? Isn't any universe consistent with a God?
No, there are a lot of universes which wouldn't be consistent with a God that I could think of. Ones that don't change, ones that don't have natures, ones that where there's no conscious experience at all. Like if you have like a kind of almost a pre-Kantian categorical imperative type of universe, that wouldn't really be a possible universe. Things like that.
Gotcha. Thanks very much. Next up, appreciate your super chat from Philip, who says, for the theists, what predictions can you make from proposing that God created everything? Isn't any universe consistent with a God?
Did I just get deja vu? Or did we just answer that? Or was there something different there?
Oh, no, you're right. I'm sorry. That's embarrassing. Okay.
No, I just thought I thought we
No, you're absolutely right. Sorry about that. Long day. Kang024, thanks for your super chat question, who says, for the theist, does simulation theory align with your beliefs?
I don't know if Canadian Catholic wants to touch that. No, it's kind of silly. I mean, the only part that I like sympathize with is the idea that God doesn't have moral obligations, but that's kind of it.
Yeah, James, you cut out a bit. Could you, if it's not a bother, repeat the question? It might be a problem with my connection.
Glad to. Let's see here. They asked, does simulation theory align with your beliefs?
My position has been that it would matter. To be honest, I do not believe in the simulation theory, but even if it were true, the facts that we see and experience would apply in that simulation, and we would still be able to deduct something. So yeah.
Gotcha. Subtracted, thanks for your super chat, who said, if God made existence before existence itself, how could he have brought the universe into existence when there's existence to bring the universe into?
You want to touch that, Canadian Catholic, first? Okay. I guess not. God is existence itself. Ipsum esse subsistens. So he is being itself, as it were. So that's kind of what pure act means. Like if we want to dive into that, but yeah, that's my answer.
Gotcha. If you want to, you may. Anybody else, if you want to respond? No? Okay. Fair enough. Snake was right. Thanks for your super chat. Says, if things must have internal force to drive them, what drives God, and why is God a necessity of that? Doesn't that mean something exists without will?
All right, let's just keep hammering them. You set them up, James, and I'll knock them out the park. You ready? Okay. So basically God being pure act, it literally means that he is change. What drives change at all? So there's nothing that drives him because he is that. He is the force in the universe, which causes the even possibility of change in the universe. So there you go. Canadian Catholic, come on. Maybe? No, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm satisfied with that answer. I don't really. The thing is, I ceded the floor because Sterling has been arguing from the Thomist position. So this was a classically Thomist question. So I just kind of let him handle all of it, right?
Gotcha.
Fair enough.
Thanks so much. Next up, question. Let's see. Stupid Horror Energy strikes again, she asks, but Thomists give primacy to metaphysics, which is the problem.
True. Yeah, we do. That's kind of I think the core difference between me and Tom is that I don't start with epistemology. I don't think you can start with epistemology. I think it gets you nowhere. You end up with like a rut, and you become a solipsist, and you're on the street, and it gets bad. Like, I don't know. I've been down that road, and it ended up getting me into Heidegger, and I bet you guys all know where Heidegger can get you. I mean, if you're familiar with history at all. Basically, actually, that's what I think. I think if you start with epistemology, that you should be a Heideggerian. You should be a phenomenologist. And if you start with metaphysics, you become a Thomist. Now, you just got to mix those together and see what you get. And it's beautiful. Mwah.
No, starting with epistemology doesn't lead necessarily anywhere. It's just, how do we know stuff? It doesn't lead to anything. It's just a method.
Leads you to Heideggerianism.
No, most philosophers reject that.
Gotcha. Thanks so much for your super chat from Merlin72001. Appreciate it. If you had a question you want to attach to that, let me know. Just shoot it in as a normal chat in the live chat. Kang024, thanks for your super chat. They said, question for the atheists. Don't we run into the problem that the origin of the universe can never truly be answered because every time someone proposes a solution, we can keep asking the question, what happened before that?
That is true. The problem is every time we find something, we are going to ask, what is beyond that? The expression that comes to mind is turtles all the way down. You're always going to keep on looking. But I think the answer is to find out as much as we possibly can. And when we don't know something, we just say, I don't know. And that leaves us open to keep on searching.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. Next up, Apollo Jedi says, Cam Spears gave $20 to James, who platforms Harasser CC. And the rest I'm not going to read because I have no idea what's going on there. But I have no idea. I cannot. I mean, first of all, I don't know if CC actually does this because I don't hang out wherever this apparently happened. But it allegedly happened. I cannot. It's hard for me to keep tabs on what everyone has done who's been here. It's hard enough to keep tabs on Tom. I mean, look at him over there on the left side of your screen. I mean, the guy's all over the place. So next up, Dwayne Burke, thanks for your super chat, who said, I love you, Tom. One time somebody...
Oh, no, sorry. I was SJ asked me to a debate she made a super chat. I'm like, yes, SJ, I've got a month of nothing to do. Let's debate.
Oh, snap. That would be off the charts. And I tease Tom Jump all the time, but I love him. Look at him there. He's a lovable guy. I mean, the most lovable guy. Next up,
James, come on. Keep it indoors.
A terrific guy. Okay, next up, Dwayne Burke, thanks for your super chat, who says, eating a cocktail sausage and thinking of TJump. I didn't make that up. I'm dead serious. That was like well-timed.
That's clearly something just James read for no reason. That's not a super chat. It's just how James feels.
I just made that one up out of thin air. No, that was real. Merlin72001, thanks for your super chat. It says, arguments for a god are not evidence for a god.
That's just wrong.
Yeah, I also, this is the problem. I don't mean to insult anyone, but if I can get philosophical for a second, I just want to ask people who will be no doubt commenting in the section. If any of our side, and this is not an offense to TJump or Amy or the person who asked this, asked a question that's so anti-intellectual in nature, wouldn't everyone be ripping at us? Wouldn't there be memes made from these, right? This is the thing I'm objecting to. Questions like these, for me, in essence, are anti-intellectual. And I'm not attacking the person who asked them. I'm simply attacking the argument. And I'm saying that it has to be fair, right? I'm not saying let's make a meme out of this. I'm just saying, can we see that and acknowledge that atheists can make dumb arguments and recognize it?
Sure, but none of mine were, so it's okay.
Gotcha. Next up, thanks so much for your super chat from John Rapp. Appreciate it. Says, TJump, was I naive to hope for some evidence of God?
Yes, I mean, you can't really hope for much when the best theists in the world can just provide kind of gibberish word games, but that's about it. So I mean,
I
there's
think
not much
that's
to hope for.
Don't you think that's a bit disrespectful, kind of like in?
Oh yeah,
terms
it's meant
of-
to be. It's meant to be.
Okay, so
But
you
I- but
don't
not to
really
you.
have
I
intellectual.
was-
Well, if you don't have intellectual respect for somebody, how can you consider their arguments?
Because
The
the
principle, you don't
arguments are
have
not
a
the
principle
people.
as chairman. You don't
No,
have
the
principle-
arguments are not the people. So I don't need to respect a person to respect the arguments they present.
Yeah, well, no, I think you do. I mean, because if you
No?
disrespect them, you can't think if it's in good faith. That's kind of like
No,
the
no, no,
principle.
so-
You can't say, like, for example, if you submit any paper to a philosophical journal, try it, and you insult the person in the first 4 paragraphs, it's not going to be accepted.
Well, no, that's
It's not.
an
It's
ad
not. They're not a
hoc.
medium of
So-
discourse.
so
It's not a good.
the
medium of discourse.
person and the argument are separate things. Like if Hitler said 1 + 1 = 2, he's right. Even
Would
if you
you?
don't
But
like
would
Hitler.
you? But that doesn't matter. That's not the point. My point is that you're attacking the person. So it's like you're violating the non-aggression principle because you
but-
don't respect them in the
Well, no, I
beginning.
don't. You don't need to respect the person. You only need to respect the arguments, and I fully respect the arguments and take those seriously.
How could you
and I don't
respect the arguments if you don't respect the people?
Because
that
the
they
people
come
don't
from?
matter. The arguments matter. Like you could write the argument on a computer screen, and it's the same argument regardless of the person saying it. Or I could get like Richard Dawkins or someone who I respect to say the argument, and it's the same argument. So the argument and the people
Okay.
are separate.
Most philosophers would not agree that that's a reasonable standard of discourse for philosophy. No
Yeah,
paper.
they do.
Try any paper and submit a paragraph insulting somebody in the first paragraph, and then go into your argument. See if you get it accepted anywhere. It's not a
Well,
reasonable
that's not
intellectual charity.
relevant. It's
It
not
is relevant
'cause the
because
principle
those
of
are the
charity-
standards of discourse.
No,
Those are standards of discourse.
No.
Yes, they
no.
are. They're the standards of
standards-
discourse.
No, the standards of discourse apply to arguments, not to people.
They do apply to people because
No.
they would never work. Nobody would
It's
ever
only
take
about the arguments.
take your paper seriously. They
Then
would
it
reject
doesn't
it
make a
instantly.
difference.
It would be rejected like that.
No,
We're
there are
going to.
lots of
We gotta-
philosophical papers with insults.
Gotta
Zero.
move-
It is
gotta move
zero
forward.
acceptance.
So
they
sorry
are.
to interrupt.
They are accepted.
I totally love that you
0%.
guys are passionate. But just to move on to get through as many questions as possible, thanks so much for your super chat from Gentle on James. I hope it's not about me. Okay, it says, I'm stiff and I'm not talking about my back. Come on, seriously, you guys are sick. Cam Spears, thanks for your super chat. It says, I am not a fan of CC. He is lying. My accusation was serious. CC, you got a major critic in the audience. By the way, some people in the live chat, they said you did it on our server. What's going on, CC? Can you take
I
it
have
easy
no
on
idea,
people?
honestly. I don't know most of these. I haven't been active on Discord. I mean, Academic Biblical, there's a subreddit, I think, which you can check out. Maybe there's a Discord. I was active on Discord months ago, but haven't been active with Discord. I really don't know. I mean, they're welcome to get in touch with their account, but I have no, I wouldn't do. No, but yeah. And I also want to say about that, can I comment about the past super chat that I kind of missed the opportunity to on?
Well, Cam Spears has another one. We might as well get out. He says, CC lied to the audience. I'm not his friend. CC's harassment is not a joke. Our server has extensive evidence of his abuse.
I have no idea what they're talking about, to be honest. Maybe they're confusing me with another CC. There are plenty of CCs. So,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're not. I think there is credible allegations, but I can't be certain. But I don't think it cares. Like for the same thing about the argument me and Sterling just had, ad homs don't matter. It doesn't matter how terrible CC is. All that matters are his arguments.
Tom is
I don't know
defending
most of them.
Canadian Catholic. Did you hear that?
Well, I mean,
The
yeah.
world is turning upside down. We can talk about that later, especially since it's apparently unknowingly on Modern Day Debates Discord. That's embarrassing. Boy, is my face red. Okay, next up. I don't know. I have no idea what. I mean, we'll look at past stuff and see. But SJ Thomason, thanks for your super chat, says, will Tom
Next modern day debate, did CC actually do the Discord?
Yeah, CCU might be on trial here. Let's see.
That would be fun. But with now to take the serious thing, I would actually not mind at all debating any of you one appearing on this again. I was at first worried, but James, you're a great moderator. There is no
appreciate that. And then we do also have, let's see, S.J. Thomason says, will Tom debate me on whether Jesus resurrected because Tom's a punk? What do you think, Tom? I added that last part.
Let's do it. No, that's in there. She called me a punk. I see.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. It's on. Well, we'll be thrilled to host that. That would be an exciting debate. Kang024, thanks for your super chat, says, question for the theists. As we learn more about the natural world, like quantum superposition, for example, do God's powers of what is logically possible change?
That's a really good question, actually, because in quantum mechanics, there are logical contradictions like Schrodinger's cat, where a thing can and cannot, or can exist and does not exist at the same time. And like time bending is also a philosophical contradiction. So it is, logical contradictions can actually happen.
Gotcha. And thanks so much for Tioga says, I wish Tom Jump would finally eat that Oreo. Tom, where's that black thing that you had hanging out of your mouth?
This is my camera lens. It goes on the end of my camera.
Why are you eating it?
Because it's fun. It tastes good.
I like that. Good.
Tastes like James.
Good answer, Tom. Wait, what? Seriously? Ashley Gaw, forgive me if I mispronounced your name. Thanks for your super chat. I know that we've had you on, Ashley. That's why I feel so embarrassed that I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name. So correct me if I'm wrong. But it's good to see Ashley. Ashley says, I mean, if he wasn't active on Discord, I'd love to hear him explain how I spanked him on Ocean's server. Oh, snap. CC, apparently Ashley spanked towards
me.
Yeah, that was directed towards you.
Ashley, is that the one? I think I had a discussion about hell, Ocean's server. And I wouldn't say that they spanked me. I think I brought good arguments, but it's said that that's the perspective you have. I'm not into sadomasochism, so I can't comment on the spanking.
Gotcha. Anamorphic Mind, thanks for your super chat, says, question for James, why is Steven Steen sending me pics of you and him together? I don't know. Why would he do that? It's like a shared sick thing you guys have. But yes, we appreciate that. Yes, CC, you have a lot of critics in the chat, but for some reason I get the feeling that you're not gonna you're CC. I mean, if you really are willing, if you want a one-on-one debate, if they take this offer of whether or not you have engaged in harassment, they might have screenshots. Are you sure you don't want to just own it?
I don't know what the thing is about, to be honest. I mean, really, I don't really have the chat open to see what it is. I'm just kind of getting these from you, so I wouldn't.
Gotcha. Thanks for that. Let's see. I will. Oh, we do have some questions from earlier in the debate. Brian Stevens, thanks for your question. Says, would universe creating pixies be sufficient for that which created the universe? And then in parentheses says, these pixies are not gods.
Okay, it wouldn't even be possible metaphysically for there to be more than one. And they would have to be pure act. Now, what it means to be a pixie is to have a certain properties which have like certain different things or certain different characteristics which are capable of change. So no.
Gotcha.
Can I make a comment on that?
That's not in the definition of pixie anywhere.
Well, what's the definition of pixie?
It's whatever I want it to be, pretty much. So.
Oh, okay. A god, the pixie, then fine. You can.
It's just not a god. That's essentially it. It's anything that isn't the Christian God that can create.
Well, I mean, if you say it has characteristics, though, I mean, like I'm thinking of something with wings.
Yep, it has wings. It's little. It's like Tinkerbell, but it's
those
magic.
Things are okay. Wings have potentialities and actualities.
Nope, they're magical wings, so they don't have that. They're just pure act wings. And
how does that work?
A pure act.
What does that mean to be a pure act wing?
Exactly.
See, your argument doesn't make any sense.
No, it makes.
It only makes sense if you don't know what pure act means.
It makes exactly.
It only makes
as much
sense
sense as Thomism. No, it makes exactly as much sense.
If you have no idea what potentiality and actuality, it makes sense, obviously.
No,
But it
makes
just shows your
exactly as much
ignorance of
sense-
what potentiality is.
It makes
and what
exactly as much
actuality is.
sense as
Did
Thomas
you
as
get
well.
the potentiality word from Deepak Chopra?
What?
Deepak Chopra.
Yeah.
I don't
He
know
has
what
a
that is.
whole thing on potentiality.
No, potentiality and actuality comes from first Aristotle, actually, and then
Gotcha.
in the scholastic tradition, kind of.
And
Dude,
what I really
Deepak
wanted to
Chopra.
ask is, how do you know it's one? How do you know it doesn't take two gods and they have to kill the third god to make a universe?
Yep.
Okay,
exactly.
so for something to be pure act, it has to be the way it is in every single possible way. So it has to be changeless, completely having no properties of potentiality, ways to be different. Now, if there was thing that had all those properties, then there couldn't be more than one, because there would be no distinction. It's like Leibniz's principle of what is it what is it called? The principle of identicals, where if everything has exactly the same properties as the other thing, then it can't be something
The
different.
law of non-identity?
I think it might be the law of non-identity. But yeah, that's exactly why.
Next up,
There's
thanks for
nothing that
your
says only
super
act can
chat
only be one
from
thing. It's-
Ashley. Ashley G says, yeah, we debated, namely CC, we debated hell as a single place. I've studied Hebrew and Greek. He hasn't. Enough said. I'll let you figure out what happened.
Wow,
Oh,
James.
snap.
James, I have to tell you, I wasn't expecting such a hostile audience, to be honest. I mean, I'm not objecting. The atmosphere has been fine. I think you've been doing, but the audience has been slightly. No worries. I mean, I love debates and heated ones. And yes, Ashley, it was a spirited debate. It was on a Discord server, and she's an educated individual that I tried my best to debate. Yeah, so the audience is hostile, but I have no complaints so far. So
Well, you guys were gentlemen here.
thank you so much.
Very nice. I will say there's a lot of testimony in the live chat, CC. Yeah, so we'll talk. But thanks so much, everybody, for your questions. I think there's maybe one or two more that I had that I did want to. Sean Kelly, thanks for your question. They said we got two more. And then they said, if there was a lie that you could make yourself believe, what would make you a better person?
That's a good question.
That would make you a better person if you believed it. Would believing it be the right thing to do?
It would. It wouldn't be right or wrong. It's not a moral question. But the first question is actually really interesting. What would a question be that would make you a better person? And I think, like, believing that you are, like, more charitable than anybody else would probably do it.
Gotcha.
And I would say that gets complicated because the first lie is always easy. It's the lies that you need to prop up afterwards to support the lies. And that's what normally brings everything down. So I am very hesitant to support anything that would be considered a lie.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. Next up,
I don't think that.
appreciate
Is that just for the atheists, or?
Oh, that's right. So sorry, you're right. Go ahead, Sterling.
Oh, okay. I think that what it means to be an ethical person is to try to be rational toward the truth. So if there was a lie, like you couldn't believe a lie, well, but if you didn't know it, that's an interesting question. I don't know, but I don't think you could purposely believe a lie and like will that in order to make yourself a better person, because there would be no lie that would make you more rational.
Well, it's a really common thing in motivational speakers is they give you like trigger words, and those trigger words cause you to feel a certain way, which is a lie to yourself, to get you to act. So it is actually a really common thing in psychology to do exactly that.
Like suggestion, kind of?
Sort of. It's more like you're telling yourself, I am the king of the universe, and it can cause an emotional response similar to that. So like, it's kind of like them using mirror neurons to do that kind of thing. So it's a lie that you tell yourself to cause yourself to feel something, which will then cause you to act in a different way, usually temporarily, but it is actually a thing.
Next up, super chat from Reverend Arrow. Appreciate it. They say, CC, thoughts on logs showing activity on Discord? CC, they're coming after ya.
I don't know how I have gathered so many enemies. I'm sorry if I did anything. I really haven't. I haven't stayed, like, the academic thing. I vaguely remember I was actually like maybe 3 months ago, and we debated the Bible and stuff. But like, I mean, I apologize if I hurt anybody there. I really don't remember. Honest apologies. I really don't
Gotcha.
know what the deal is.
We will, let's see, we can talk about that later, but want to say thanks everybody for being here with us. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you folks. Hope you feel welcome. We are a nonpartisan channel, so no views are expressed on behalf of the channel or any of the moderators here. It is purely a platform for other people to argue their views. And so whether you be a Christian, atheist, you name it, no matter what walk of life you're coming from, want to let you know we hope you feel welcome here. And with that, do want to let you know all of our speakers. I have put their links in the description so that if you've listened and you're like, I want that, I want more, well, you can hear more. And so highly encourage you to check them out. So thanks so much, folks. Keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable. And last, any thoughts, any last goodbyes from everybody? It's been a pleasure to have you all.
Well,
Yeah,
it was
thanks,
a pleasure to. Oh, sorry, I interrupted Tom again inadvertently.
And we got another super chat too. So yeah, thanks for having us on. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, Neat Bucks pointed out the law of attraction is one example of telling yourself a lie that'll motivate you to do stuff. So those kinds of things do exist.
Yeah, I thought it was a great debate. James, again, I know I'm kind of praising you, but you were a great moderator. I think it went fine, actually. Like, I was concerned about my voice sound and stuff, because I thought, and yeah, the debate was respectful for the most part. At least I thought that way. So maybe at the start there were a bit of nerves, but it kind of got settled down as time went by, and it was fun. Thank you so much, and I am more than willing to do next. This is a great venue, for debating. I think it's a great place on the internet in general.
Thank you. And I think that was everybody. So,
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think it all went awesome. So
Yeah.
thank you so very much.
so glad. Absolutely.
great.
Thrilled to hear that. And last super chat from Stupid Horror Energy, who says the water brought James and I.
Waiter.
Oh, the waiter. Oh, it's like first time reading. Okay, the waiter brought James and I sushi that was encrusted with diamonds. Does that even make sense? I tried picking out the diamonds. James laughed at my attempt. I pushed the plate away and started. Gosh, you're sick. Okay, next up. So thanks so much for hanging out here, everybody. It is always a good time, and we hope you have a great night. We will see you tomorrow afternoon. That is going to be a lot of fun. We are going to have a creation biblical speciation debate. It's going to be a former zoologist against Standing for Truth and Raw Matt. So it's going to be a 2-on-1 Lion's Den debate. That is first time in a long time we've had a Lion's Den debate, so that should be a lot of fun. A handicap match, you might say, 2-on-1. And so thanks for being with us, folks. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.